If you started this journey through the Bible with us back in June, you will have completed a third of the annual plan by the end of this week. And you're now 2/3 through our walk through the Old Testament. This week we conclude our study of the Old Testament poetry books by looking at Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs. We finish events from the United Kingdom era by focusing on the reign of King Solomon. Our Bible teachings this week include more of our Christian responsibilities from Luther's Table of Duties and a review on what sin is. We look at two Bible books this week, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs. Both of these books have been attributed to King Solomon as the author, who we'll look at in our Bible events this week. Ecclesiastes can be described as the search for a meaningful life. The teacher, who is described as the descendant of David and the king in Jerusalem, thus Solomon, is on a search for meaning and purpose. But his search is limited to things under the sun. This means earthly things apart from God. He tries to find meaning in pursuits of wisdom, work, wealth, and pleasure. But none of these holds any lasting value. He sees his pursuit as ineffective as chasing the wind. The book is a warning to all readers that pursuing meaning apart from pursuing God and His will leads only to emptiness, heartache, and despair. The last of the Old Testament poetry books is Song of Songs, Solomon's love poem or collection of poems, depending on how one reads it. Don't be ashamed if this book makes you blush as you read it. Its language is intimate and often risque. While many see it as a poem that celebrates marital love, others can see in this love poem between a man and a woman hints at the love God has for His people, or Jesus has for His church. We will see in our study of the prophets in the Old Testament and Paul's letters in the New Testament that the marital relationship is often used as a picture of the divine-human relationship. We've been looking at the roller coaster reigns of Saul and David, and this week we look at the third and final king of the United Kingdom era, Solomon. Solomon is the son that David supposedly chose to succeed him as king. In 1 Kings chapter 3, God speaks to Solomon and tells him, "Ask, what should I give you?" Solomon replies, "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, so that I may discern between good and evil." God says He will grant Solomon's request, and Solomon demonstrates this gift of wisdom as he deliberates the case concerning the two women and the living baby at the end of chapter 3. In chapters 8 and 9, we see Solomon complete and dedicate the temple he had built for Yahweh, even though we read last week in 2 Samuel chapter 7 that God didn't want a temple. Even Solomon acknowledges in 1 Kings 8, verse 27, "But will God actually live on earth? Look, the entire universe and heaven itself cannot contain you. How much less can this temple I have built?" God still seems willing to use Solomon's temple, but He does warn, "If you turn away, you or your children, and do not keep my commandments and my statutes, this temple will become a heap of ruins, and everyone who passes by it will be shocked." Solomon's great wisdom, wealth, and work projects soon gained international fame, and people traveled from all over to meet him. In 1 Kings chapter 10, it is the Queen of Sheba that pays Solomon a visit. She said, "Not half was told me about your wisdom and wealth. You have exceeded the fame that I heard about." Great wisdom, great wealth, great building projects, worldwide fame. Solomon's roller coaster reign was going up and up. But like Saul and David before him, his reign will culminate in a sin that soon causes everything to come crashing down. His major sin is mentioned in 1 Kings chapter 11 when we read about Solomon's many wives. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. These marriages were made to promote peace. A neighboring nation was not likely to attack you if you are married to their princess. While having 1,000 wives was definitely not God-pleasing, the big issue seems to be the shrines for other gods that Solomon built for these wives. and then how they led his heart astray to worship these false gods. As punishment, the united 12 tribes will be split, with 2 tribes going to Solomon's son Rehoboam, and 10 northern tribes going to one of Solomon's officials, Jeroboam. We'll talk about this next month as we move into the divided kingdom era. The point of the roller coaster reigns of Saul, David, and Solomon is that for all their successes, none of these kings were the true promised king that would create a true kingdom of peace for God's people. There is another king coming, one who is without sin, and a king who is more about giving than taking. In fact, he will give himself as a ransom to save his people. This is Jesus, and he alone will confidently state, "Someone greater than Solomon is here." For our Bible teachings this week, we will return to Luther's Table of Duties, which we also looked at in the 4th week of July. This week, you'll look at verses that summarize the Christian's responsibility in the areas of home and work. There are also verses for young people, widows, and a couple verses that apply to everybody. Our explanation questions focus on the topic of sin. Question 53 helps us see that there is original sin, which concerns who we are as sinful by nature, and actual sin, which concerns our actual behavior. Question 54 reminds us that we not only sin by doing bad stuff, but also by not doing good stuff. Question 55 states the important truth that all human beings are guilty of sin and therefore in need of the forgiveness that Jesus offers. Jesus alone is the perfect one who obeyed the commandments for us and willingly died to take the punishment we deserve for our sin. We move into our October unit of study in our next video. Please join me, and until then, blessings as you remain in God's Word.